After our Red Skull video, you folks asked for it, we're here to deliver. We're going to tell you which Hydra friends play best with Mr. Red Skull, where to position them, which T4s are really going to make your opponent dislike you in your next war. Let's do this. Alright folks, welcome back to Alternate Reality. I'm Chewburger84 and today we're going to run you through this ultimate Hydra squad for Alliance War. So this is the way this video is going to work, folks. I'm going to take you through the 5 best characters and why we left the poor lonely one out in the cold. I'm going to talk to you after that about the best positioning for that team, and then we're going to summarize which of those T4s in what order should you spin those. So let's start off with the poor guy that we're leaving out, and that is the Hydra Grenadier. And as an owner of one that's 5 red stars, that upsets me to no end. So the reality is his grenade is not bad. It does a slow to the primary target, which is good. A little bit of splash damage, which is fine. No real utility outside of the slow. It's fine. Nothing to write home about though. When it comes to the special, it's a little bit better. I mean, the fact that you can repeat this ability twice, it's on a relatively low cooldown. Clearing debuffs is actually not bad, but there's just not a lot of damage coming from this guy to justify his spot over some of the other people in this squad. Now, the fact that he's only giving focus and it's only to himself, that's the main reason that he's not giving utility. He's not playing nicely with everyone else. That's where he really starts to fall down for this squad. So let's go through the essentials. So Red Skull, you already know, but let's go through his kit one more time anyway. So his basic, I'm going to phrase this more of, is it worth T4ing? So his basic, in war it taunts, which can be very, very handy for you, and it drops the defense down. Amazing. Now, it will chain, and the reality is the chain is reliable enough that for just 30% extra piercing damage, it's not really enough to justify a T4, so that's not going to be a high priority. For the Elite Guard on his special, being able to guarantee 3 minion summons, that's definitely something that's worth having a think about, because that's going to be more of a pain and more things that the enemy is going to have to kill before they can finally get to your Red Skull. Now, an extra 40% damage on this is not too bad, and the fact that Red Scar scaling is coming into play here, this is something that you're probably going to want to do. It's not the most important one on the list, but it's certainly very good. Then we get to his ultimate. Now this one here, providing an extra 50% damage is always good, especially at higher red stars. But the main reason you want this is it's always going to apply offense up to all allies and himself, giving him a lot more utility. And then it's going to gain the guaranteed assist for 5 Hydra allies, not just the 3 to 5 randomized. So having that guaranteed damage to get the most out of his ult, because it is on such a long cooldown, this is something that you definitely want and is going to be a lot higher up on this list. Now his passive, it doesn't seem like it's very big, an extra 5% speed, but a global 5% damage for all the Hydra minions and himself as well. It does add up, especially stacked with another character's T4. So this is one that if you want to maximize the effectiveness of this team, it's probably going to be something you're going to look at in the very, very near future. Now, this team is definitely going to use the Hydra Armored Guard. It allows you, if they don't kill him, if they're getting splash damage and you're taking out minions, it means those freshly resurrected characters have some time to get healed up by your Scientist. If we look at his basic ability, it just does a standard assist for Rifle Trooper, and getting that damage in is quite nice. But other than that, for an extra 5% piercing, don't T4 this. It's a very bad idea. Now for his taunt, it does what taunts do, but this guy also clears all negative effects on himself and heals for a massive 5% of his maximum health as well per negative effect that is removed. Now if Red Skull's on the team, which of course he is, he's going to get immunity as well. And this is even better because it means they're not going to be able to rip off his taunt as easy. They're not going to be able to do a few other things as well to really eat this guy with like a defense down, for example. Now I wouldn't get the T4 on this because T4s on heals are only worth it when it's percentage based. If it read like heal 5% up here, maybe. But a flat 2,500 health in this day and age is nothing in this game. So please, please, please don't do this. Alright, then we get to his passive. Now the fact that he does share a lot of armor with this squad, It's kind of tempting to do it, but armor is one of those stats that's very easy to overcome at the moment. Maybe ISO 8 changes that one day, who knows? So it's great that he obviously heals himself passively. That's not buffed if you T4 this. But then if we're looking at the armor, another 5% for him and the team, definitely not worth a T4. That 5% is, I guess, a nice little buff if you've got him raining down like it's Christmas time, but for most of us, I would not do that one at all. So he's a solid little, very simplistic kit tank. Let's start off with the Scientist and the next run here. So the basic is going to have a heal block when you have Red Skull on your team, which is guaranteed. It's not going to be if he's not there. An extra 20% damage and 5% piercing, even if I had this guy at 6 to 7 red stars, I still probably wouldn't do it. Again, unless you had red stars coming out of every orifice that you own, I'd skip this one. But a nice little basic heal block can be quite good, especially on war defense, just to slow down things like passive Minervas who are going to heal every time one of your guys die. Now this one here, the death proof and the deflect to the most injured ally is very good. The fact that the cooldown on this is so low and you're doing this all the time makes this character in this team very, very good. Now the fact that there is 3,000 health and 5% of this character's max health, if you had a lot of red stars on Scientist, I'd think about this one. It is only 5% though, so it's not going to be a massive priority, but if you want to get multiple defense wins and you want to make sure that if you really railroad an opponent team, you can heal up and then do it all over again with 8 fresh charges on that Red Skull. Now for the passive here, we're going to have 10% max extra health for himself, Hydra minion, everyone else. That could be worthwhile. The fact that they're minions, they are relatively squishy. That's kind of the point. It's why Red Skull resurrects so many of these characters. So having an extra 10% health is not bad. And being able to guarantee regeneration and 2 random positive effects guaranteed to all of your injured Hydra allies, who are the 2 most damaged, I should say, not all of them. That definitely comes in very, very handy. So this one would be probably the highest priority on this character, and I think it's going to feature a little bit higher up on the list of recommendations after you get through the damage T4s, which we're going to talk about very shortly. Alright, so one of the engine rooms of this team is the Hydra Sniper. Not only is he not bad by himself, he helps the rest of the team ramp up. His basic, there's not really much special there. If you had 7 red stars, 40% piercing is actually pretty good. Wouldn't be my first one, but certainly if you're trying to min-max a team, that'd be one that is only for high red stars. Anything below, I would say 5 red stars, don't even think about it, okay? This one is the good one. All right, so at the moment, we have our change of speed bar by 50%. An extra 10% every time he does his special is very good for him. But getting a guaranteed 2 offense up to a maximum of 3. And this is obviously linking in with Red Skull to make sure this team is always offensed up. That's going to make up for a lot of their stat deficiencies from being a minion team, is a very, very good thing to have, because it's going to apply to all Hydra minions, including those summons. All right, with the way the turn order works, this is quite a good one to have. All right, so these are the real engine room of this team. Now, this is the one that I said, if you're going to do one of these, you might as well do both of these. So 5% speed for himself and all other Hydra minions is very good. And in war defense, an extra 5% crit as well is very good. All right, so between this and the one from our Red Skull buddy on the passives, that's 10% extra speed, and you're also getting that extra damage from the Red Skull as well. So this is something I would think about. The fact you're going to crit more often as well, that also is a very, very good thing. So again, if you're not worried about speed, do neither of those, but if you want a little bit more speed and more damage, those 2 combined actually form together to give you a much more effective team. Now, Hydra Rifle 2 is pretty much the indisposable guy outside of Red Skull, really. You don't want to get rid of this guy from this squad no matter what you do. His basic, it's okay. I mean, it's doing 290 damage, it's doing piercing, definitely not worth a T4. But in saying that, he is going to be getting called in very frequently. So you are going to get a lot of use out of this basic, but I still wouldn't T4 it, because he's going to shoot when there's revives. He's going to shoot when there is counters, which is not very often, but he's also going to shoot on those assists, which we've already seen comes from some of the other characters. Hail of Bullets is his AoE, nice and simplistic. It does piercing damage to everyone and on a medium cooldown, so it could be a little bit better in that sense, but it's more than enough to do the job. Where most of his sustained and regular DPS comes from is this passive. So at the moment, you only have around a 60% chance for him to be able to assist on non-attacks for Hydra allies. We want that to be 100, and that is what the T4 does. I ran out of materials the other day. It's the only one that I have so far, because at the moment I believe it's one of the most important, all right? Because in the opening round, you're going to have the tank is going to do a special, and you're going to have Red Skull do the same thing. So there's 2 free attacks in the opening round already, and that starts to add up over time, all right? As well as being able to on revive spray everyone. That little bit of extra 30 piercing is nice, but it's not the main reason we're doing it. It's the guaranteed assist, a little bit like the role that Sabretooth plays in the Marauder squad currently. So this is how the squad looks, guys. I think it's a very, very good team for this. Definitely leave Grenadier out. Just does not have the utility that we need for this particular team right now. There is a debate that obviously if you had massive 7 red stars on this and you don't want to have multiple defenses, but you want to kind of screw over one team if they're using a hard counter like an Inhumans, or if they're using a Ultron and you want to try and push them to the max to sneak out one victory, maybe you drop in Grenadier instead of Scientist, okay? But having a lot of that health drop out, it's pretty hard to argue that. So the team as it stands is definitely going to be Hydra Armored Guard, Hydra Rifle Trooper, Scientist, Sniper, and then your Red Skull. All right, you want to have your guard out here. You want to have Red Skull next to that. The reason being is that any splash damage then is going to land on Red Skull. Red Skull is damage immune as long as these characters are still on there. As long as he has 4 Hydra buddies up on the team, you cannot kill him. So you want him to take all the splash damage. The only downside is if they're using a vision, they can get a twin ability block on the guard and the Red Skull. But the reality is with guard being a little bit slower than characters like Korath and Vision, they're probably going to get that out anyway on Red Skull no matter where you put him. So you're going to go guard, you're going to go Red Skull, and then for the other 3, to be honest, it really doesn't matter where you put them. The main important positioning is definitely having guard, then Red Skull, then any 3 that you like. All right, so let's summarize those T4s in our priority order now that we've talked about roughly how they work, so that you can work out which order you should do these over the next couple of days. Now, one of the reasons this team is so strong on war defense is the amazing synergies that it brings. So we see the Hydra Guard, for example, can increase the armor for this entire team by up to 20%, which helps them with their survivability and opening burst, although armor isn't as effective as many other statistics. We then have the Hydra Rifle Trooper, increases 10% damage for the entire team, which is a good boost out of the gate, as well as providing 10% max health for him and his colleagues. Then we have the Hydra Scientist, who also provides 10% max health. And then on top of that, we also have him applying Death Proof, Deflect, healing the most injured ally, as well as applying regens and some positive effects, and even clears off stuns from Red Skull, meaning that you can keep him alive so that he can keep calling in those assists and putting those defense downs. Then of course we have the Hydra Sniper, whose passive can increase by up to 15% speed, not just for them but also for the entire team, as well as a whopping 15% crit chance on top of that, which increases the DPS even further. And then of course on top of all of that we have Red Skull himself, who has the ability to add 15 speed again to this team for a combined 30% total between him and the Sniper, and an additional 15% damage flat top as well. So when we add all this together, it's an incredible boost, and losing any one of these characters would make them significantly less effective. So why don't we jump across and see which T4s are required to unlock all the synergies that you see on the screen right now. Now for the T4 upgrades for the Hydra squad, it's pretty obvious which 5 are the big ones, and there's not too many T4s you need outside of that. Now the first one might be a bit of a controversial pick, but I think it is the best for damage throughput, especially in the first round, and that is for the Rifle Trooper passive. Now we're not doing this for the extra damage on the revive, we're using this to guarantee the assist on all non-attack abilities. You see, in the first round, this is going to give him him 3 extra free attacks on a particular enemy out front. Now that means we're going to be able to get someone a little bit lower than they would have been, so by the time we get to that ultimate on Red Skull, we're going to be able to have a much better chance of blitzing that enemy character down. Now, very, very close behind this, in fact, they're almost interchangeable for priority, but I would stick with Rifle Trooper first, is going to be our Red Skull passive. This is going to give us 5% extra damage across the board, as well as an extra 5% speed for this entire team, which just means you get rolling a little bit faster. After that, we need to double down that speed, and that's where we position across to the Sniper passive. Now, the Sniper passive is going to give you 5% speed on top, so that's 10% that's going to be gained between him and Red Skull. And we're also going to be getting 5% for the whole team with speed, and also 5% crit on war defense only. If you're not using this team on war defense, obviously you would skip this one at this particular time. Between those three, we're going to give a lot more damage, we're going to have a lot more speed and critical chance, and then what we want to do is obviously have as many offense ups and call-ins as possible. So from there, we go to the Storm Assault, which is the Red Skull ultimate ability. With this ability, it's going to guarantee offense up to all allies, an extra 10% damage, which is okay, but the real reason we're using this is that we want the best chance possible to nuke someone down on this ult. So we want to guarantee that all 5 Hydra allies get called in for this attack, rather than some being random between 3 and 5. Now, very, very close behind that, you could probably do this in the other order if you really wanted to, is the Sniper special ability. Now, this is good because it gives offense up +2 to a maximum of 3 to all Hydra Minion and Red Skull allies, which means you're pretty much always going to have offense up between this and between the Red Skull. And that's very, very important with minions because their stats are usually nowhere near as good as named characters. The extra 10% speed bar shift is quite nice because obviously being on such a low cooldown means you're going to be able to rotate through this a lot more frequently. And remember that this is going to give you damage on this ability as well because you've just maximized that passive on your Rifle Trooper as well. So that rounds out the 5 that I think really drives the engine of this team. If you've got a few extra T4s and you've got some big red stars and you want to splash out, there are some others that you can do. The Elite Guard special from Red Skull, which is going to give you 3 minions guaranteed and 40% extra damage. This is actually really good if you have good red stars because Stark Tech and red stars are already applying to these minions. So to get extra damage out of this team, this is definitely not a terrible one to have. And then shifting across, obviously we want this team to last as long as possible. So if we go across to the Scientist, move down to his passive, we're going to get an extra 10% max health for himself, all Hydra Minion allies, as well as applying regen and 2 random positive effects to the 2 most injured Hydra allies. Now, those 7 combined, I really don't think you need any more than that. The only caveat I would say at this time is if you got really, really big red stars onto the Scientist, you may want to do the special for heals. And if you got really big red stars on our Rifle Trooper and you want to maximize those assist damage and you want to maximize those hail of bullets, which is the AoE, you could do that. But to be honest, the gain that you are going to get is so minimal. I really don't think you're going to get much more bang for your buck than the 7 that we just listed. So what do you think, folks? Did we get this right? Did we get it wrong? Make sure you hit like, subscribe, and leave your comments and feedback in the comment section below. Make sure you also check out our ANR podcast channel if you'd like to hear the extended versions of these in our weekly podcast, Strike Force Masters of Launch. And until next time, cheers.